Welcome to the show with your friend and mine. So tell me, Doctor Squee, who's it gonna be this time? We like to hear you talk, and we love to hear you listen. And if you are not subscribed, you won't know what you're missing. So welcome to the Doctor Squee Show. Welcome to the Doctor Squee Show. Welcome to the Doctor Squee Show. Headphones up. Here we go. Welcome to the Doctor Squee Show. Tonight, Squee welcomes
Alexander Siddig.
And now here's the man himself, Doctor Squee.
I'm literally just playing that theme tune every now and again so I can stop talking for a few minutes. I need it right now. So please welcome to the Doctor Squee Show and to Squeefest. And just very quickly, please do donate at justgiving.com/Squeefest. We are doing this for a reason, to raise money for NHS charities together. Thank you. We will read out the total again in a little while. But please welcome from 24, Game of Thrones, Gotham, and of course, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Alexander Siddig.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really kind. And what a great job you're doing. Excellent work, Doctor Squee.
Thank you. Well, like speaking to a fellow doctor, like I just have to check before we get into everything else. Have you at Starfleet Command come up with anything for COVID yet?
Yes, but we won't find out for about 400 years.
Damn it. I thought we had an answer there. I feel the need. I know you probably get asked this in every interview you do, but you've got a slightly longer name in the fall.
Yes, Siddig al-Tahir al-Mahdi, but it is very long if I want to do the whole thing. Siddig al-Tahir al-Abdurrahman al-Abdul Karim al-Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi. But and people will correct me because I'm always getting it wrong.
I almost introduced you as that, but I thought I wouldn't show off, Sid. How are you doing? How are you coping with this strangest of worlds we're in at the moment?
It is the strangest of worlds, but we are coping. And happily, we've got, I mean, my wife and I are in a really leafy part of Western Massachusetts. So it's a little bit earlier here than it is over there. And we've got a lot of responsible people around us. And the only person in our bubble, so to speak, is her mom. So we're between the three of us, we do very well, and we don't have quite the lockdown restrictions that you had in the UK, which may be one reason why COVID is off the charts here in the States.
Actually, it does make me feel a little bit better because I am of the ilk, and like every respect anyone who thinks differently, but I feel like we may be like, because we're heading towards possibly another mini lockdown here. Yeah, I think maybe we should have done a little bit longer with the first one because maybe we wouldn't have had such issues now. But I hear about America, I feel a lot better. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so many what ifs. I mean, the president here has his own agenda, and so everybody's a sort of free for all. Every state is doing whatever the hell it can in order to hold on to this racing train, and some governors are doing a better job than others.
Yeah, I just want to bring in, I'll bring comments as we go along, but Heather's put, Sid, since you're here, I'd just like to thank you all for your time you spent with us in Sid City Social Club since COVID-19 shut everything down. You're an inspiration and role model. So just to give props as we go along, I'll bring in a few of those as we go. Right. But I wanted to go way back to like, so you were born in the Sudan, yeah?
Yes, in 1965.
Do you have a lot of memories of that, or did you come?
I do. I have memories of it. I mean, it's a little bit unbelievable because I must have been under 3.5 years old. But I remember colors. I remember a couple of different conversations I had. I remember a revolution beginning. I talked to my grandfather who was shaving his head over a bird, pool, the things that birds come and flutter their wings in, and. I remember saying to him, and I must have said it in Arabic, but what are you doing? And he said, I'm shaving my head. But I remember that conversation. It was so mundane. And then I remember standing in a doorway with one of my cousins who was a lot taller than me, and a big hole appearing in the door of the courtyard, wooden door. And I said, what's happening there? And he said, oh, that's a cannon. And I mean, I remember lots of these conversations. I remember the house being searched by troops, and we as adults and kids were moving from one room to another, while the troops were in the other rooms as we were going around. You can't really hide 40 people very easily, but I remember being told what was happening and looking up at this forest of adults. I remember colours. I remember all kinds of things from that time. It's quite weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the head shaving, but I could imagine a revolution might stick in your memory. I could understand that one.
I didn't know what a revolution was, but I mean, soon thereafter, I was packed off on a plane with a case full of mangoes and sent to England. And my mother, unfortunately, wasn't told. She was already in England. So I sat in the airport for 8 hours while the amazing air steward looked up who I was and found out through the Home Office how to find my mum, who eventually arrived.
You know, the wonderful thing about that is, and I like to laugh at these kind of like this. Well, anyway, you're British. You're part British. I'm sure you'll get the sense of humor of this. I love the fact that if someone's made up on a TV show that someone was sent to this country with a box of mangoes, they would be laughed out as a racist stereotype.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is exactly what happened to me. My grandmother, who packed my case, said he doesn't need anything but his beloved mangoes. I loved mangoes. And I loved mangoes and weirdly Ribena, which we had in Sudan at that time. And so she sent me with a case full of mangoes. My mum told me the story many, many times.
And you had a couple of famous uncles. Now, I just love the image of this family gathering, but who are your two famous uncles you've got?
Yeah, there has never been a family gathering to that extent. Both the Sudanese and the British or pseudo-British, which is what I am, element, because my uncle Malcolm, who's a very well-known actor, played in lots of wonderful movies. Malcolm McDowell. If you haven't seen Lindsay Anderson's movie called If, watch it. It's one of the great, beautiful allegorical films. And he's obviously made lots of other great films too. And then Siddig al-Mahdi was the Prime Minister of Sudan, who was being overthrown while I was 3 or 4 years old. Hence the revolution. That's
so crazy. So, like, I mean, talk about like a revolution on your doorstep, like not only in the metaphorical sense, but quite literally.
Quite literally, yeah, yeah. And I was very lucky because I was from a relatively privileged family, but obviously our family were running the Sudan. I think Uncle Siddig was the first and last democratically elected leader of the Sudan. So he was displaced by a military junta, or junta, depending how you pronounce that.
Yeah, so you arrive in the UK, kind of like, do you remember a lot about that time of first arriving here and just...
I have to admit that I have to resort to my mother's memory for my actual arrival in the UK, because I think I was fast asleep. I woke up in the cab. She had a black cab take us back from the airport into London, and the first thing that I did is look up. I didn't say hi, mummy or anything. I just went, oh look, there's an aeroplane up in the sky. And she burst into tears, and then I begin to piece memories together as I start to learn English. And I went to a wonderful school called Bousfield Comprehensive in London near Earl's Court, South Kensington actually, and made a couple of friends there and kicked balls against the wall like all kids do, and as quickly got into the swing of things.
I mean, I suppose it's kind of like a 50-50 thing. You found out we had Ribena here, but the mango situation was a little bit dicey at the time.
Mangoes were bleak in England. They were terrible.
Young people don't understand. We didn't used to have it all year round, as we soon won't after Brexit. No, I won't go there. I won't go there. Well, to myself, I wouldn't.
Yeah, no, there are lots of things in Britain and elsewhere you've got to eat in season, like sweet corn. Don't bother eating sweet corn in England. Go abroad and eat it somewhere where it's actually grown deliciously, like Massachusetts. The sweet corn here is like night and day compared to what it is in Britain. Obviously, I'm in the process of destroying an entire industry, so I'm going to have to retract that. Eat as much sweet corn as you want. But my goodness, there's a big difference. And things like pineapples and mangoes and all those things, which you really only get in subtropical climates, you should really eat them where they are.
Yeah, I mean, and if you are going to eat the like the sweet corn over here, at least go to a farm shop or something, or a
yes.
store. not the supermarkets.
Wait for a super hot year as well, because they love heat. Sweet corn loves heat.
Oh, so we've got a question from the floor here. Sid, do you have any tips for people in terms of how to preserve, build up mental and physical well-being while during all the restrictions imposed on the world by COVID-19?
That's a really difficult and a very good question. I mean, I think you need to really build a circle of friends. And one of the reasons why we have the Sid City Social Club, don't ask me why it's called Sid City. I think Mel came up with that. She runs it. And but hey, there's a whole city named after me, even if it's virtual. But the Sid City Social Club is really just a group of friends. And we've been doing it for 6 months now. Getting on for, and everybody gets together, about 100 people or 200 people a week, for about 4 hours, twice a week. Not 4 hours twice, 2 hours twice a week. And there's an enormous camaraderie and support network, and people, I think, from what I understand, really take solace from it. And whether they're living alone or with family, they can talk to people about what's going on. So really, it's just a forum, a group, a social club, where people come again and again and again, and we often have lots of new people. And it's been a real a kind of balm for people, and it's been wonderful for me too, because I've been talking to lots of people about their extraordinary lives, even though they say they're extremely ordinary. And it's been truly tremendous. So if you want to come, go to Sid City. We never publicize it because we only have a room for 100 people. But hey, I'm publicizing it a bit now. But seriously, if you feel lonely and out of touch, and that you really could do with a group of people that you could get to know potentially, then sign up. I mean, all you have to do is log in. The login is posted minutes before the actual event. We do it on Tuesdays and Fridays. Tuesdays probably a better day for Fridays are probably a better day for people in Britain, because we start at, I think it's 8 p.m. Friday, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. We do it at 3 p.m. on the East Coast, but that's about sort of dinner time. And then it goes on for 2 hours, and people either put their camera on or use it like a radio in the background, or they talk to me, because I talk to people, as many people as I can, for about 15 minutes, and really interrogate them about their lives and what's going on and what they love and what they're cooking and what their family's like and how, all that. Right now we're in the process of showing each other photographs of each other as kids. So we go through sort of phases of themes, and sometimes we do a play. Andy Robinson, one of the Star Trek actors, and I will, read some fan fiction for them, or we'll get other actors. We've had Nana Visitor, we've had Cirroc Lofton, all the old Star Trek crew come on and do fan versions of Deep Space Nine, which have been pretty tremendous, really good fun.
Yeah, it's been amazing seeing those videos, and we may end up just skipping here and there and everywhere in this interview, but
skip it over. Who cares?
It was just wonderful to see Andrew Robinson and yourself. Like, I don't know if you do this, but you have a specific Bashir voice, which isn't quite your normal speaking voice. It isn't quite any of your other characters. And I know it's the same thing with Patrick Stewart. Are you aware you've got a Bashir voice?
No idea.
I swear, like, I may be corrected in the chat. Like, please tell me if I'm insane or not in the chat. But
yeah.
I swear there's a cadence to the way you just, it's just slightly dialed up British in it. And
yeah, I mean, I'm more colloquially British. I'm more colloquially British when I talk to you, because and when I'm at home in Sussex, and because I'm a normal bloke, but obviously Bashir speaks a slightly higher class or level of Britness than I do, and it makes but I'm not really aware of it anymore, to be honest.
I think there's also I think especially because I feel like again we'll get into this in a bit, but like I feel like there is kind of two Bashirs, like before and after kind of the reveal that he's got this extra intelligence, and I feel like the second one, you've got a more of everything he's saying is kind of he's thinking about everything he's saying particularly. Is that something you try to put in there?
There could be some subconscious thing, but I mean, I was livid when I was first told that I was genetically engineered, because I just was like, that is so not what I planned for this character. But hey, the best plans go awry, especially when you've got wonderful writers. And they just imposed this on me one Thursday for the following Monday's shoot. And it was like, oh, I could have prepared. And I didn't, but and then I started fighting it all the time. If ever I had to do a quick sum in my head, it would be Bashir would do it really easily because he's now, you know, a genetic super being. And I fought against that, but we kind of found a human compromise where it was really more of a sort of stigma than it was a Data-esque, if you're a Star Trek fan, thing. And I was worried about the data-ness and didn't really get a handle on the stigma problem until a bit later, and then it became something interesting because there are lots of people whose lives are affected by decisions that parents and doctors make that affect the rest of their lives, and that Bashir falls into that camp a bit. So I probably did consciously alter the way I delivered lines and stuff like that, but that was really me rebelling against the fact that I had become this. I didn't want to become Data. I wanted to just stay, you know, silly old human Bashir. And that was really important to me. And I think we just about put that off.
I mean, I feel like, you know, if he is this superhuman, super intelligence, he's going to also be, or it's possible that he would be very emotionally aware of, like, you know, oh, someone who, like, he might be a good study of humans, like a good actor, and he might be able to, like, oh, okay, people are a bit overeager and a kind of frontiersman, like, you know, he might chuck that into his kind of act as kind of downplaying his intelligence.
Well, I think I was really cynical. I was a really cynical cast member because we had a lot of people. We had a very, by the Next Generation standards, we didn't have great ratings. We had pretty good ratings by today's standards, but you know, several, you know, millions and millions of people were watching it in whatever 75 different countries. But by the Next Generation standards, which was a kind of network show, we were a cable show, and which has a big difference in America hierarchy. You know, network shows are the real thing, and cable shows are kind of, you know, you watch it if you want to. And but so we all felt that anything that happened to us was all done in order to trigger more ratings. So I got the sense that I was being genetically engineered to become more like Data because they wanted a Data on the show because it was popular in Next Generation.
I never thought of it like that because it just always seemed like, you know, maybe it's just the wonderful. I think actually the best stuff comes out of an actor and the writers challenging each other. I think if you agree too much, you don't get any growth or any kind of like.
You're absolutely right. That is entirely true. The word, when you get a line that you say, I can't say this line, you know, when you say it, because you're gonna, it's better because you've actually challenging yourself to find a way through something that normally you would do naturally and not think so hard about. So when you've got a line and you go, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Sometimes it really actually benefits the role because it's you've had to really search for it someplace. Getting a bit deep into the acting thing, but nevertheless, that challenge, that tension that you're talking about is a real truism.
I mean, something which I very much noticed, I think it was just the age I was when Deep Space Nine came out.
Like
I was very aware of sorry?
You were two when Deep Space Nine came
out. Bless yourself for saying that, but a few more years older. But I was buying the VHSs on my own independently, so, you know.
You were throwing blancmange at the TV like that, out of your pram.
I was like, I was a young adult. Let's just say that, and we'll leave it at that. But,
Angel Delight. Do you remember that?
Again, you're very kind, and yes, I do, and yeah. Right until I became a vegan, I loved it, but that's not the point. So, it just seemed like I was aware because of the age I was at the time that the first few series seemed to kind of like try to be a bit more like what Trek had gone before, and then became its own thing. Where I think, you know, as you go into the Dominion War, you go into its own ideas, and like the more people were saying, it's like, I don't know if this is Star Trek, the more it became its own thing, which is good, I think. Like, because, but like then when you look back at the Next Generation and the other shows, you do realize that went through the same thing. It's just maybe you know, maybe we were all a bit younger at the time and didn't notice.
And it was more pronounced in Deep Space Nine. I mean, for the first year, we were trying to be, I mean, Ira Burr, who's the showrunner, tells me that it was trying to be pretty much formulaic Star Trek, you know, relatively different shows every week, and what we call lots of bottle shows, which are shows that just don't cost very much money, really, and then a few flash shows, which they spend all the cash on. And then the second season, he started to think differently. Started to think about serializing the show, which meant having stories that didn't finish after 47 minutes, and then everything started to expand. So it evolved while we were shooting, and Ira and Ron Moore and all the crew, all the writers, really ran with that, and it became one of the first serialized shows on television, long term, for especially in America anyway. And it was so that actually kind of arrived in the second and third season, and then once they started with Dominion War, as you say, and all those things later on, it didn't look back, but it really benefited in terms of hindsight. At the time, we just felt like a show that the studio didn't really like. They sort of went, yeah, do whatever you like, you know, we don't care. And in a way that was offensive, but it actually let us off the leash, and we were capable, and the writers were able to do all sorts of innovative stuff that no one else could do, because studios were so iron-fisted about the whole thing.
Yeah, because with the Next Generation, even, you can point to so many episodes where you go, oh yeah, that's kind of their version of the original series one. And with the early DS9, you could do that. When you get to the Dominion War, it's like, I haven't seen this before. And it was what seemed interesting to me was the kernels of it in the earlier series, though. Like when you didn't notice all these kind of powerful things being put in, like Vedic Win and the whole religion of it, which then paid off dividends later. Do you think they, like Ira Stephen Bear, maybe had it in his mind, and some of the writers had it in his mind to put in these elements to use later?
Yes, they did. I mean, Ira will tell you that he did, and he's told us. But I mean, they came up with it as the way it worked in the writers' room was Ira was incredibly democratic, but a kind of a benign dictator, if you like. He would hear everything, run with anything that sounded fun and sounded good. And whoever had the idea, even someone off the set, someone off lot, just someone in the public who wrote in an idea, they would go, "Well, that's great, we'll do it." And sometimes they would even get that person to write the show for them. That was kind of jackpot for kind of fan fiction writers back in the day, when you write in an idea to Star Trek and they say, "Yeah, sure," and you're going to write it, so you're going to get X $1,000 for the idea. Thank you very much. So he was really pragmatic about the whole thing, and some ideas he inherited, like the Ferengi, for example. He certainly didn't he came up with them in the first place, but then he inherited the kind of unpleasant side of them, which is a sort of slightly anti-Semitic thing that was going on, and he had to fight against that, being Jewish himself, even though the characterization was sort of, you know, a little bit on the nose. And other things he totally invented himself, like Section 31, were completely out of his mind, which then became part of Enterprise and subsequent TV shows. So it's a wonderful symbiosis throughout the whole Star Trek Enterprise, and sometimes for better, and sometimes, I suspect, for worse.
Section 31 there, that was another point, I think, where Bashir got just something so meaty. Like, you know, even though it sounds like you had your own personal kind of like struggle with how you dealt with the kind of intelligence thing, that obviously was such an engine for stories, as was Section 31.
Yeah, and Section 31 I really thoroughly enjoyed, because it gave a dark edge to Bashir. And no one could be quite certain if he was as lovely as he appeared to be some of the time. And it certainly got a chance to me to be a bit more flinty, a bit more steely with delivery of certain lines. And I really liked the relationship with Sloane, my kind of handler. And a lot of people in the subsequent fiction, because they've written a lot about this, have run with the whole Section 31 thing, and Bashir has become sort of a monster. I don't think that's really the way I'd like it to go. But I've been, you know what, that character, at the end of the day, was one of the luckiest characters in Star Trek, because he got to do so many different things, put so many different hats on, relationships with wonderful characters like Garak and O'Brien, and even Kira Nerys, obviously Jadzia Dax, but everybody had a different relationship with Bashir, and it was a real blessing as an actor to be able to keep changing it up whenever I wanted to.
Yeah, I've got some more questions in a second, but I will bring another one from the floor here. So we've got Chippens. Sid, is there something you miss the most from those DS9 years?
That's a really interesting question. I think probably up until the point I got married and Django arrived, my son, who is now 24.
Django Unchained. Sorry,
you can imagine what he felt about that movie.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Because he was already like relaxed about his name. He thought it was quite cool, and then everything was Django. But right up until that point, I was really carefree, and I kind of missed the carefreeness. You know, staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning playing Ultima Online or some other computer game, and then going bleary-eyed into work at 7 o'clock in the morning and trying to get my act together. I just didn't have care in the world. So though that was great fun, and also the idea of developing a character for a very long time is always an extraordinary privilege, and a handful of actors in history have really had a chance to do it, and I constantly thank my lucky stars.
Yeah, something which you mentioned about the relationships. How did you feel about the Ezra-Dex relationship? Because to me, it just felt like it was giving Bashir like the consolation prize in the writing. It was a good, nice idea, but
yeah. Well, I think again, I mean, and I hope other people speak against this if they want to. But really, what I think this was all about formulaic television. So they had to have a young hunk who would come in, and that was on the boy side, and that was Bashir. Puzzlingly, how on earth I got that role. And then we had Jadzia, who was a supermodel and astonishingly brilliant, in her role. So naturally, these guys had to get together, and there had to be a little chase and figure out whether or not all of that stuff. And that just petered out because there was actually no chemistry between us. And when the writers went, wow, there's just, you know what, we don't buy it. We don't really believe these guys would be together. So it was the refrain for a whole season. When are you going to get together with Jadzia? Is Bashir going to get together with Jadzia? That was like the whole first and a half seasons.
That's why I love that they didn't do it originally. It was really interesting. Like, we thought it was going to go that way, and then Worf comes in and he doesn't. I thought it was great, and then they it felt like just a little bit going back on it with this.
Yeah, we had chemistry as friends. We had chemistry off set, but on film, it was just one of those things that just did not work. It just was like, this is so improbable that we can keep this cat and mouse chase going for a bit longer. But clearly, Jadzia is a category of a factor of more powerful than Bashir. And they just didn't seem to be the kind of people who'd be together. And it was clear to me. I was like, there's no way I would, this wouldn't happen to me in real life. This is not the person I would end up with. This is someone I could look up to or see in a magazine cover, on a magazine cover or something.
That is so British of you, though. Like, oh no, I can possibly be with no.
Of course not. Absolutely not. And it just did, and it never worked. And maybe because I felt that way, that was the reason. But nevertheless, it was the case. And because I was still scrabbling around trying to find an identity as a character, Bashir, because he was young, he'd just pretty much left college, and he'd been thrown into this space station, which was kind of the culmination of all his wildest dreams. And he could roll his sleeves up and do interspecies medicine on the far reaches of the galaxy. And that was basically what he was. But girls didn't really come into it. And I didn't really get that whole aspect. And I certainly was, and that was why the hunk element just didn't pan out. I think the first review for, and it's around somewhere, a Hollywood Reporter or something, for Bashir was like, and they talked about all the characters, which is like, Avery Brooks is Benjamin Sisko, gives a fine metal performance, and then our visitor gives an astonishingly emotional, blah, 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 blah. And Siddig al-Fadl, as I was called at the time, as Bashir, ... throws like a girl. End of. That was my review. I was completely gutted. I hadn't been set up. I didn't set myself up to be the hunk. You know what? People on TV at the same time, people like Jason Priestley, remember 90210 and Melrose Place, all these shows, they were our competition, for in the primetime slot. And they were perfect human beings. And I just could never see myself that way. And because Bashir was slightly autobiographical, if you're going to play a character for 7 years, you've got basically yourself to draw on, and whatever whim the writer imagines. I just went, well, I'm not going to be that. I can't be that. And I've never been that. I never got all the girls or all the guys. I just wasn't that sort of attractive person. I was a different sort.
Yeah, the one we've got from the floor, which I'm just going to find it because this has to go on screen. So we've got, here we go. This. I wish that they would have taken the bull by the horns and dared to allow Derek and Bashir to have a chance. What do you say, sir? We would have loved to have seen it.
The writer, Ira, said himself that there was a real layer of homoeroticism in that particular thing. But can you imagine in 1992 in Hollywood, in America, that the first homosexual relationship would happen on Star Trek? Not a chance.
I mean, how much did they lose their poop when Dax kissed the girl on the episode?
I know. I know, and that was sort of fashionable, and I never really understood why girls kissing girls is sort of fashionable on TV, but boys kissing boys is completely taboo. I think it's because of a sort of genetic kind of clampdown on male fantasies are fine, but female fantasies are not.
Yeah,
and I don't know whether two boys kissing is a female fantasy. By the way, that's complete. I have no idea. But I'm assuming that two girls kissing, well, I know that's a kind of generic male fantasy. And I suspect that I hope that's not offending anyone, but maybe it is. But it's nevertheless,
we have to be honest about these things to talk about them.
All the censors, exactly. Censors would be like, that's fine. Yeah, two girls, no problem. They wait, no, not two boys. That's weird.
Yeah. Did you ever listen to Bill Hicks or watch his stuff?
No. I might, and just don't remember the name.
Stand-up comedian, died sadly in the 80s, very young, but he used to do this bit where he said about these books they've got now. It's like Heather's Two Mummies and Don's Two Daddies, and he goes, disgusting. Obviously, Don's Two Daddies. Heather's Two Mummies, great read. And he'd sort of take the mickey out of that. It's just it's that exact thing.
I do remember that.
Yeah. But it's one thing I did love, and I think this was a reading of one of the fan fictions. They've gone up on your YouTube page, and I just started watching them, where it is you reading out these extended kind of plots, and it's you and Andrew, and there's this wonderful bit where you talk about you fell in love with the next Dax, which was Ken. And not only do I love that it's kind of showing that male relationship, but I love the fact that it's called Ken. You've got Ezra and Jadzia, and you've got Ken. It made me very happy that for some reason.
Absolutely. The mundanity of it. It's sort of really ordinary. It's like meeting a dog called Roger. It's like, what?
Ezra go to Riser with Jadzia go to Riser with Ezra. You might go to some sort of great conference and find some interesting times with Ken. You just pop down the pub with. It would be great.
Exactly. You just have exactly, or even a cup of tea at 11 o'clock.
It'd be lovely. I think we'd be traveling time with Ken. It would. Getting on to your earlier stuff. So you went to the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. There's a quote which I absolutely love, because it kind of reminds me of podcasting a bit, but way before podcasting. Because you said, and this might be made up for the internet, I don't know, but it said, I was in a situation where I pretty much had a theatre company at my disposal and a theatre. I could do whatever I liked as long as I did it for nothing.
Yes.
Isn't that what we do on the internet now all the time?
That's pretty much what most people do on the internet. Exactly. I was really lucky. That was just after acting school. And my mentor, basically, a teacher called Brian Astbury, who had been in South Africa and worked at the Market Theatre there, and came over with all this knowledge of how to deal with theatre on the fly at very budget levels, especially in complicated situations, because apartheid was, alive and kicking in South Africa, and he partnered up with one of the finest playwrights ever called Athol Fugard, and they put on play after play after play. And then he said, he was a teacher with us, and then he said he knew I wanted to be a director, which was kind of anathema acting school. The vice principal, Colin Cook, who is a phenomenal human being, but he was so angry with me. He was like, "You wasted another kid's opportunity at being an actor by wanting to be a director." And I was like, okay. And he kept on going. He didn't stop there. We were in a pub actually having a pint of beer, and he's like, "You are the second worst actor in this school." And I was like, "Okay, that'll be me then." And obviously we were getting drunk, and but eventually I got to the point where I actually took Brian up on his offer and said, "Look, I'd love to be one of the new directors of this company." And he said, "Great, find a play, do it, and we'll do the rest." And so he found a pub we could work in, and we raised, whatever it was, 350 quid a week in order to pay for the room upstairs at this pub. It was probably a bit more than that, but nevertheless, that's how I saw it. And we didn't make any money. We didn't take any money. Everybody sort of made an effort, contributed, building sets, painting stuff. And the only important thing was that we'd use just acting school leavers to be our actors. So we couldn't go into the professional world to come out. This was designed to showcase to agents and whatnot that these actors were really good and they couldn't get a job anywhere else. And so that's what we did. We did about 4 or 5 plays. In fact, bit of trivia, Rufus Norris, who is now head of the National Theatre, was the other director. So together we were the 2 directors working eventually in a church basement in Paddington, or actually a church in Paddington. And Rufus was doing his thing with his incredibly talented writer wife at the time. I think they're still married. And I was doing my thing with a wonderful writer I found called Simon Andrew Sterling. And I also did a bit of Shakespeare. So we just had a really good time. And then everything got train wrecked because I became an actor. By mistake. They paid me. I just couldn't turn it down. £1,000 a week I got for my first TV show, and that was like crazy money for me. Still is.
I don't know if this was the TV show or if this was a theatre production, but I believe when you're at a point of financial struggle, it says that you went into a Lawrence of Arabia sequel, Lawrence After Arabia.
Yes, that was called A Dangerous Man, Lawrence After Arabia. It was actually a very fine film, I think, if I say so myself. And because Ray Fiennes played Lawrence, and we had a star-studded cast, as all British productions do, because you see the same actors and everything. And it was produced by the great David Putnam, who went on to become Lord Putnam, gave up producing, and it was his last producing venture, let me say. So it was a very, very beautiful film, and it basically corrects some of the misunderstandings about the Balfour Agreement, the Treaty of Versailles, and how the Arab world with the Middle East was carved up by the British, the French, and Americans. Well, not so much the Americans at the time. And then Rafe got to did an amazing job playing Lawrence, and I played Faisal. I actually got a postcard from Alec Guinness after he'd seen it, saying, "You were much better than me," because I played the same character he played. And thank you very much. Really good job. And I never kept that postcard. I don't think. It might still be at the house. We still have the same house, so it might still be in some nook or cranny.
From that early experience of having that freedom within the theatre, is that something which echoed into your future work? Because when you talk about having the boldness to be able to say to a writer or a director, well, no, I don't think my character would say that. Not every actor feels that free to do that. Do you think that comes from there? Well,
I think it's also, I think I illustratively said that to say that when I see a line and I object to it, the thing to do is actually do the line, not to not do the line. But I am. But you're right. To a degree, my early work as director obviously gave me some really good experience in understanding how to interpret text, and then make sure that other people can understand that. And together we mine a play for whatever information that seems appropriate. And so I kind of approach parts that way. I'll approach it as a director first, and then as an actor, so that I can go, right, how do I unravel this? How do I, as one teacher once told me, how do I hijack the thought before it hits the page, from the writer, so that really you're trying to get the rawest possible element of it before it actually becomes pretty and it's in black and white on a piece of paper, because it's been edited and carefully structured and everything. You want to just get the raw emotion before it actually becomes a line, and then it's that's kind of fun. That probably takes a little bit of experience as a director to be able to do that.
Well, as speaking of directing and working with actors, we've got a good one from the floor here. Sid, would you ever consider any teaching of the theatre course on Zoom or in person? I feel like you would have a lot to offer different levels of actor as a teacher.
Oh gosh, I just come to Sid City Social Club. I'll tell you anything you want. The minute I set myself up as a teacher, that means I probably need to be there next week, and the week after, and the week after that, in order to fulfill a syllabus of some kind of ideas. And that is not me. I'm just the most unreliable person on the planet. Ask my son. The occasional birthday I'd miss because I was in goodness knows where filming God knows what. And I would be like, sorry, I can't be at your birthday. Sorry, I can't be there for Christmas. Sorry, I can't be there for, the play that you're doing at school, or the baseball game or whatever it is. And that sort of unreliability does not become a teacher.
Yeah, something which I found interesting was, I want to get onto a few of the other shows you've been in. So 24, I find, obviously, like from your own experiences, that gives you a particular viewpoint on tackling some of these characters. That was an interesting show because I think, although it was coming from the point of view of authoritarianism a lot, you had characters where, like, just one moment which always sticks with me was Jack Bauer goes at these guys who are business owners about, like, because basically they're Middle Eastern, so he goes at them and interrogates them, and then they end up helping him in the long run to defeat some actual terrorists coming at them.
Yeah.
How did you find that show for, like, how it kind of portrayed the Middle East and how well it did? And
I can't speak about the whole show, but I can speak about the bit where I was in. And when my character arrived, I was really driven at the time because 9/11 had happened, and and everybody who was even vaguely brown was suddenly a terrorist or potentially one. And there was an enormous amount of hysteria and tension certainly in the Western world. And I was really unambiguous with my agent that I just really didn't want to play terrorists who were there as a tool for someone else to be heroic. And so that part came along, and he was a terrorist, but he was much more ambiguous and interesting than that. It came from a character actually that I played in Spooks before that, which was also a terrorist sort of coming in from the cold, who had changed his mind, who had grown up a little, who had decided that the way he had been was really not the right way. It wasn't going to get what was needed done. And I love that element of that character on 24. And so obviously we got together, Kiefer and I, and kicked it around. Kiefer, by the way, has a eidetic memory. He rewrites the whole show every day, every morning. He gets out of his trailer and just starts rewriting everything. I mean, the writers must have just gone nuts, but he would do it every morning. So I would have to wait for 25 minutes while he'd rewrite the scene we were about to do. And then because he has this wonderful memory, he doesn't have to look at it again. He wrote it, he saw it. I, on the other hand, I'm like, I've got 15 minutes to learn 3 pages. What am I going to do? And that was hell. But the characterization was really great. And in fact, there's an anecdote about that. They wanted, once that started, to get Kiefer and I together long term. They wanted the show to be these two characters as a double act. And they told me, and I said, but I'd already made a promise to this young person who was making a movie for peanuts, but in August. And I said, well, I can't because I've got this little art movie to shoot. And they went, well, I can't say what they said, but you can bet it started with an F and ended with an ED. And they were like, you, Das, you. And I told you right away, I'm doing this little art movie next. And so that relationship never happened, and 24 never took off in another direction, which they really wanted it to. So that would have been a lot of fun. But I love the ambiguity of those sort of characters. And Howard Brenton, who wrote the Spooks episode, just had an ear for how Arabic people spoke. And at least I felt he had an ear for it. And how they lapse into, kind of drift into poetry and drift back into prose, which is totally, they do that without shame in Arabic, and he got that. I really like that.
Well, one which seems like a kind of, in a way, a sidestep, or a tenuous link, as I'm going to make anyway, is Gotham, because you were the first person from the Middle East to play Ra's al Ghul, which
Weird,
is just insane. It's really weird to think of. Was there certain things that you want to bring into the character to make it more realistic to what the character should be?
Well, the first thing I did was change the name from Raz, which is not Arabic or Aramaic or Hebrew or anything. I mean, there was not much information. I mean, he was Raish al Ghul, the way I played him. And people had trouble making that change because Liam Neeson had insisted that it was Raz, just as all good Northern Irish people would call him. And so he became Raish when I was playing it, and everybody in the cast had trouble with that. But there's the one bit of information I could find about Ra's al Ghul is that the name comes from a kind of Hebrew Arab take on something that the writer wanted to explore. So I went, well, Hebrew Arab, let's go with Raish, because it would have sounded more like Raish, and that's where we went. It was great to play. In the end, to be honest, no offense to anyone who produced it, I felt a bit underutilized. I felt like, well, here I am, and I could be teaching Batman all kinds of dark arts, and I'm doing something with this other person, this woman. Anyway, back to you, Batman. I want to teach you what now? What do you want? What? I'm here to deal with Batman, and you're giving me, okay, what are we doing? And then that sort of fizzled out because I think they wanted again. It's another mistake. They wanted that character whose name I completely forget. Wonderful actor, blonde woman. I can't remember her name, and that one. And they wanted them to have some sort of liaison, some sort of tension, some sexual thing. And then I reminded them, I'm a good 20 years older than her. And they're like, oh yeah, right, that's not happening then. Okay, we'll just do something. So it just got all unraveled.
Even that seemed still suggested in the writing, though. I think they still try to sneak it in.
They tried to because they made the decision to, and then I just went, I just don't think that's appropriate.
Okay, you won't do that type.
Yeah, she's a kid, I've got a grey beard. Shut up.
I mean, the one thing that I think, because we got a little shade of it, but like it would have, as you say, been more interesting to develop it more. But it's like you've got, it's wonderful that you've got this kid Bruce Wayne as well, played by David.
Amazing, by the way. That young actor is one of the best young actors I've ever worked with, and that is not an exaggeration. He is exceptionally good.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's wonderful, and the darkness which you could have with having him kind of seduced by the dark side with Raish, it's just wonderful. There was so much potential.
Seduction would be infinitely more interesting than the sort of plain old seduction that sort of they were trying to get me to do, which is an ordinary seduction. But the seduction of a young child, now you're talking. Now you're cooking with gas, as the Americans like to say. That's kind of interesting to me. That's sort of really bizarre and got all sorts of potential.
I mean, I don't want to spin off too much to talk about Gotham in general, but it seems like every time they made a brave decision, to have such a complicated Alfred. Sean Pitt was wonderful. I got to interview him a little while ago, and then they'd kind of just they always dialed it back every time, and like
fudged it. Yeah, it's like
the battle between you and Alfred for like the soul of Bruce is just so much meat on that bone.
You're not kidding, and we just missed that beat. And once it's funny, once writers decide something, they try and see it out, and if it doesn't happen, it sort of stays in the air like a jet stream for ages. Like, oh, it's the air's still got this jet stream, it doesn't leave. It's like when a dog farts, it just is there for hours. You just can't go back in the room for hours.
I know that experience well. We've got two of them. It's a couple of things. I'm just going to jump all over the place, but you originally considered the Cisco in Deep Space Nine. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it is. I was far too young, but Rick Berman saw A Dangerous Man, the Lawrence of Arabia thing that I was talking about a few minutes ago, and he really he was, God bless him, he was sold on having an ethnic captain for the first time, and so he went, right, that's it, we got it. We got the guy, because I was a prince and I was strong, I was a leader of men in that show, and what he didn't know is I was 25, and once he found out, he was like, okay, right, plan B. Let's find a proper actor to play Cisco. And they found Avery Brooks. And I was lucky in that they just gave me the role of the Doctor, who was originally called, a good trivia question, can't remember the answer myself, but he was called something else. And they just changed the name to Bashir. So I got the role before I even started, which was really the best way to get to Hollywood.
Yeah, and the chat has now descended into all talks of dog farts, but there we go.
Sorry about that. It's about something that just lingers.
I think everyone's just very pleased at hearing you say dog farts. I'll give them. I agree. It's wonderful. But we get back to the British sense of humour. But one thing I found really interesting, getting back to again the issues around kind of like the accelerated mental acuity of Bashir. And when you saw the dark side of that, or the kind of other side of that, of the what seemed to me of the other people who'd gone through the same experiment and had it seemed like figures of autism were being used there without saying it. How interesting was that? Like, we talked about mental health earlier. I think that really spoke to the heart of that in those episodes.
I think so. I mean, I think that basically we know nothing about this, the brain, and we know nothing about these. Well, we know bits, but we know very little, shamefully little, about problems that are neural in nature. And I think that there but little chunks of entertainment shows trying to discuss it in very airy-fairy allegorical ways, which never really hit home. And Deep Space Nine was very good at discussing difficult issues, and you knew when they'd made up their mind to do it, because you've got shows like Past Tense or Far Beyond the Stars. You've got these wonderful shows which really dealt with knotty issues, but I don't think they really committed to that with Bashir, because at that time, even being on the spectrum was really just a very vague term. I mean, I don't think people were really being diagnosed with Asperger's or autism or what have you until about that time. It was a sort of it was kind of discovery, or not a discovery, but more of a ascertaining of what these neural problems might be, and how to deal with it. And remember, it was all just Ritalin this, Ritalin that. Let's just put them on these drugs and forget about them. Let's stop us having to deal with it. And I think that we have evolved, and we really respect those issues now, and we really try and be as inclusive as possible with everybody. And that is only a good thing, because we all learn by being together, and sharing our stories, whether they're stories of depression and anxiety, or whether they're stories of winning the lottery. But that sharing is what's important, and getting together with people different to you is really important.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I've worked myself. I worked partly as a counsellor, and my son had a mild form of autism. So I worked with some groups which he went to, and it's just, the more you learn, the more you realise it's like the frustration sometimes some people feel it dealing with someone with autism is exactly what they go through every day with like us neurotypicals. Like we're so frustrating to them. And it's the more you learn that, the more you learn kind of how many things you get from that interaction and learning how someone else thinks and being able to put yourself in someone else's headspace. I think
there's no right or wrong. You know, we're all learning. I mean, this is all new to everybody, and there's no manual. And you know, the reality of being in society with and being neuroatypical, as it's sort of quaintly called, is very, very complicated. But it requires actually that the people who feel neurotypical are embracing of that person and you know, a patient, and that because the friendship is entirely possible, entirely doable, and friendship on any level. And again, this is one of the things that the social club, I think we're doing really well, is that people feel really included, and we've got all kinds, you know. We haven't got many people, but we've got all kinds of people. It's like a kaleidoscope of humanity in there. We've got the whole trans community. We've got people who have no confidence. We've got people who suffer from anxiety. People who have terrible illnesses and all sorts of other things. And we all struggle on together. And we sort of have built the boat and are sailing in it.
And it doesn't get much more Star Trek than that message. But I do want to get just a couple more questions in very quickly. You were in Game of Thrones, of course. Can you just give us just any story that comes to your mind about Game of Thrones?
Game of Thrones is really interesting. I got hired to do quite a lot of Game of Thrones, and it got cut short. And I was really looking forward to it. I mean, it's a really, really exciting character for me. Kind of ticks a lot of boxes. Wheelchair bound, yet trying to be strong, and all sorts of other things. And I think because Game of Thrones was coming to an end and the producers realized that they would be going only for another couple of years, they just went, you know, let's shoot him. Let's shoot that guy. Because we just can't unpack him. We can't unpack him and finish him off well enough for the show to succeed, for his character to succeed. So they called me. I was in a hotel in Los Angeles doing something for something else. And they said, look, we're going to kill you off, mate. And I was like, oh, yeah, you know, all right, thanks. And I was furious because I was just beginning on what I think was probably the biggest show in the world at the time. And I thought that this was just going to be such an opportunity. And then it just wasn't. And ultimately, they had a very good reason. And because they had trouble packing up the show anyway. They had all these characters squirting off in different directions. They couldn't, like mice. And they just couldn't put them back in the box. So it was a very unsatisfactory ending for a lot of the fans because these things didn't get resolved. So can you imagine with yet another leader having and their family having to deal with that? I think it just was unfortunate, and it was just timing. Brought that guy in a couple of years earlier. Could have been quite interesting.
Okay, and Blood of the Daleks, you started in Doctor Who audio. Like, not many may know about your Doctor Who link here.
Oh yeah, I'm a Doctor Who, a veteran of Doctor Who. No, I play the odd villain for the audiobooks. I really enjoy that for Big Finish Productions, who are London-based, and they serve the best lunch in town. So we go there, and I meet all the doctors and various other bits and pieces people. And all of whom are familiar to me from British telly, and I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. And we put our earphones on, and we're in this cubicle together, and we just go boom, rattling through the Doctor Who script, and we get it done in 2 days, you know. And it's great fun, Okay, it's the nearest I'll ever be to Doctor Who, unfortunately.
If you've got a couple more minutes, just while I'm waiting for my next guest to appear. First of all, you've lived in the UK yourself, so have you got any stories of the NHS that you can share with everyone, just to tie into the theme of the day?
I'll tell you something really simple. This is really, really straightforward. My wife, who is now my wife, came over as my girlfriend, and she got an infection when she came over to UK within several weeks. We went to the National Health. We went to my local doctor in Petworth, as it happens, in South England. And the Petworth surgery, and she got some antibiotics, and she was put right, and she was taken care of. And I've got two stories. And when she went to get, pay the bill, they said, oh, it's nothing. You don't owe us a thing. I think you might owe us 75 pence for the antibiotics. And she went, that never happened in America. I'd have to pay thousands, for the consultation, for anything they could charge me for. And she was just amazed that she was ill, went in, they fixed her, no questions asked. The other thing is, my mum died of cancer probably about 2003, nearly 20 years ago now. And she was in and out of hospital. We started off in Los Angeles, and I think I had to pay maybe $30,000 for her to be diagnosed and spend 2 or 3 nights in the hospital. It was an absolute fortune. Obviously, she wasn't insured.
Yeah.
And not cancer. And then she came back to England, and any stress over money never happened again, but she was looked after by some of the finest people in the world. And that big shout out to Macmillan nurses as well, who are associated with National Health and work with them, who just made sure the rest of her life was comfortable and stress-free. And I am deeply indebted to the NHS for the care they gave.
Thank you very much. For anyone watching, justgiving.com/Squeefest to donate now to NHS charities together. Just finally, I like to round these things off, just a little quirk of my podcast, asking for different advice from the people I speak to so we can all learn something. Do you have something about, because I feel like your career has been so interesting, and especially as we've talked a bit about the fact that as an actor of Middle Eastern descent, like sometimes you can get very samey roles which you've worked against. What do you have advice for people to break out of a mold and to do something different with your career?
That's a really difficult question, because especially in acting, but in other careers, I would just embrace, because acting, obviously, you've got to look a certain way before you get involved. You're not going to be able to play, a white mountain climber if you're an African man. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to be playing Edmund Hillary. But for everybody else, it goes back to relationships. It goes back to trying to feel finding the comfortable entry point to a relationship with people in the office, or people at work, or people you interact with, and finding who you are, who you as a person who interacts with other people is. And that can be incredibly uncomfortable for the first few months. But as time goes by, you'll bump into kind people, and you'll bump into a lot of unkind people. There'll be a lot of failures. But trying to carve out relationships and who you are in those relationships, how you interact with people, is really important start to getting ahead and changing career course. And because your advice and the kind of doors that open start to vary, and you can't do that if you just stay at home. And some people who have to stay at home, they can thank God for internet, and get out to somewhere like what we do, and find new people that way. But it's right now, especially as COVID is going to go, we're a humbled society. We've been beaten by a virus, and that humility should make people, I hope, a little bit kinder.
Sid, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful hour. I could speak to you for 3 and not scratch the surface of your career. Thank you so much. And everyone, please check out, I'm sure everyone in the chat already has, but check out Sid City online. It's wonderful what you're doing there.
Please donate, even a pound, 50 pence, anything. It all adds up.
Here. Thank you very much, sir. Take care, and may we be out of lockdown all around the world soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sid. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.